So everybody is online now and it's 8 o'clock, so we can start. So one of you has to read. Tarika, you normally join for essays on the Gita. Okay, so if you want today, you can read. Okay.
I'll need some help. I'll need some help with the page because I have not been for.
Okay, okay. So
Can you tell me what is the page in SABCL?
yeah, SABCL page is 154.
Yeah.
And the para is the Gita, however, goes much farther.
Okay.
So we'll read the para and then we'll come back.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Rangada. Just a minute.
Yeah. Take your time.
All the settings have changed on my this thing. That's why the Gita, however, goes much farther. It speaks clearly of the Lord himself being born. Krishna speaks of his many births that are past and makes it clear by his language that it is not merely the receptive human being, but the divine of whom he makes this affirmation. Because he uses the very language of the Creator, the same language which he will employ when he has to describe his creation of the world. Although I am the unborn Lord of creatures, I create, lose forth myself by my Maya, presiding over the actions of my Prakriti. Here, there is no question of the Lord and the human Jiva, or of the Father and the Son, the divine man, but only of the Lord and his Prakriti. The divine descends by his own Prakriti into birth in its human form and type and brings into it the divine consciousness and the divine power. Though consenting, though willing to act in the form, type, mold of humanity, and he governs its actions in the body as in the indwelling and overdwelling soul. Adhisthaya. From above he governs always. Indeed, for so he governs all nature, the human included. From within also he governs all nature, always, but hidden. The difference here is that he is manifest, that the nature is conscious of the divine presence of as the Lord, the inhabitant, and it is not by his secret will from above, the will of the Father which is in heaven, but by his quite direct and apparent will that he moves the nature. And here there seems to be no room for the human intermediary, for it is by resort to his own nature, Prakritim Swam, and not the special nature of the Jiva, that the Lord of all existence thus takes upon himself the human birth.
This is a very interesting paragraph because the question of what is divine and what is not divine. Okay, so every human being, we know the Vedanta tells us that everything in the physical world is the divine. Okay? The one in the many, the one becoming the many, the many in the one. So everything is divine. There is nothing else except the divine. Okay? The Advaita philosophy. So here the question is a little tricky. It's our understanding, the human understanding is limited. That's why we have a problem with this. What Sridhar is discussing in this is, normally what we understand by avatar is the human being, which is body, mind, life, but he has a divine nature. The nature is divine, it's not human. And so that can, so this is the problem. So now, when we understand the avatar by definition is partly human at the lower end and fully divine in the higher end. Okay? So this is the avatar. But now, Sridhar is saying that the Gita is saying that he is quoting also the phrases, no? Chapter 6, verse 4. Okay, he is saying, although I am unborn, okay. In fact, it is the sixth verse of chapter 4. Okay, Ajo api san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakritim swam abhisthaya sambhavami mayaya, atma mayaya. I myself, I am the divine, and I am myself, although I am unborn, although I am always avyaya, okay, and I am the Lord of all creatures, Bhutanam Ishwara api. In spite of being all these things, I control my prakriti, adhisthaya. I sit on my prakriti and I take birth by my own power. Atma Maya. So this is what Srimba is finding a little difficult. He will say afterward, this doctrine is a hard saying. Okay? Because normally what we understand is that the human element is there. So this is a question. So this whole question has been discussed in detail in Life Divine, the divine and the undivine. Is there really anything undivine? The Advaita says no. Okay. If you are at the lower end of the of creation in level 1, yes, everything seems to be undivine. There is evil, there is suffering, there is pain, there is death. Now all these things are the opposite of the divine. So this is the question being discussed here. So Sriyamdo is never critical of the Gita, never. But he sometimes has his reservations, and sometimes he says, these things may be that time in the language and all that. So we will pass it by. Like that he says about other things also, once in a while. So I'm reading each sentence now and we'll see. So what is our conception of the avatar? The avatar has a human body. There's no doubt about it. The human body, a human vital and a human mind to begin with. Okay, the possibility, the potentiality of the divine nature is there from the beginning, but it's not manifest. Okay, like in Srimda's case, very clearly. Okay, he was not even interested in spirituality. He was interested only in liberating his country. So this is a question. But when the avatar is ready, the future avatar is ready, the divine can descend into him. We have discussed that also, the process of avatarhood. We gave the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who when the divine descended into him, the divine consciousness, he would become absolutely, he would be like the Lord. He would bless people and he would give advice and all. But at other times, he would be like a human being. So in Srimda's case in 1926, Sri Krishna himself descended into his body. So there onwards also absolutely a divine nature. Okay, so, so this is a question. And it is a very tricky question. We are likely to also misunderstand. Because on the one hand, we say everything is divine. And on the other hand, we say there is a human element. Okay, so I read each sentence and then we'll see. The Gita, however, goes much farther. Much farther than what? Much farther that it's a human being who becomes divine. Okay? It's like the in the Rig Veda you have the famous legend of Kutsa. The very word Kutsa means imperfect. Okay, in Sanskrit. So Kutsa and Indra are riding in the chariot and going to heaven. So that's a symbol. All men are riding in the chariot of the body-mind life and are journeying to heaven. Okay, that's the image. And by the time you come to the heaven, nobody could recognize the difference between Kutsa and Indra. Okay, so you have put on a divine nature. Now that is the question that is being discussed here. The Gita goes much farther. It speaks clearly of the Lord himself being born. The divine himself is being born in the physical world. Now this also is true because the entire universe is created by the divine and it descends into it. So at the universal level, this is absolutely a fact. But at the individual level, in the phenomenon of avatarhood, that is a question that raises a problem. Okay, so the Gita, however, goes much farther. It speaks clearly of the Lord himself being born. Krishna speaks of his many births that are past and makes it clear by his language that it is not merely the receptive human being, the human being who is ready to receive the divine into himself, but the divine of whom he makes this affirmation, the divine himself of whom he makes this affirmation. Because He uses the very language of the Creator. Okay? The Lord Himself who is creating. The same language which He will employ when He has to describe His creation of the world. And there you are, He's quoting now, Srimad is quoting. Although I am the unborn Lord of creatures, I create, lose forth, issue. Okay? Srij is the Sanskrit dhatu. Okay? Srij, sriji. You sort of ooze out. Okay? You loosen out whatever is there. It, like the bud oozes out the flower. Okay? So that's it. Loose forth is the word used. Srij. Loose forth is the actual meaning of the word, the dhatu, the root word, srij. By myself, by myself, by my Maya. And remember, Maya is, we have discussed that a lot in Lifetime class, Maya is the power to create forms, okay, and real forms. But when that descends, that power descends, it becomes the power to create unreal forms, apparently unreal forms, transitory forms, that which are subject to time and space. Okay? That's what he's saying. Then he's saying, presiding over the actions of my Prakriti. I subdue my Prakriti, stand on it. Adhisthaya is the word used. Adhishtha. The word adhishtha is to stand or sit upon. You sit on, you dwell, you preside, supervise. So, adhishtha 3, you do that. You look from above. Supervision is the word. So, here there is no question of the Lord and the human jiva, or of the Father and the Son, the divine man, but only of the Lord and his Prakriti. The human being doesn't even enter into this statement which the Sri Krishna is making. I am the unborn Lord of creatures. I create by myself, by my Maya. So, Swami is very categorical. He's saying, here there is no question of the Lord and the human jiva, but the Lord himself. So that raises the question. The divine descends by his own Prakriti into birth in the human form and in time, and brings into it the divine consciousness and the divine power, though consenting, though willing to act in the form, type, mold of humanity. So the divine creates a world, agrees that he is going to enter into darkness and ignorance, and then comes and dwells inside. He creates the forms and he dwells inside. Although consenting, he agrees to reduce his own consciousness, reduce his own knowledge, reduce his own power, and take birth in the universe. Take a physical form. Though willing to act in the form, willing to act in the form means in the ignorance and the inconscience. He is willing to act there. Okay? But in the mold of humanity, he is a man. The mold, our body, mind, life is a mold in which the soul enters. Huh? So that's it. He is using that phrase, mold of humanity. And he governs its actions in the body as the indwelling and overdwelling soul, adhishtha, adhisthaya. So what is the indwelling? The psychic being. And the overdwelling? The self. Okay? That's why I said they use the word central being. Central being is both. Okay, it is the psychic being which comes down into the physical world, and also the self which remains up and supports you. The psychic being is the ambassador of the self. It's like when our ambassador is in America, he represents India. Okay? He may get feedback from, but he represents India. So the psychic being represents the self. Okay? Essentially divine. So he governs his actions in the body as in the indwelling and overdwelling soul. From above, he governs always, indeed, for so he governs all nature. We know that. That's it. Transcendental. The divine takes 3 forms. We know that also. It's all related, all these things. The transcendental divine stands above the cosmos and sends his deputy into the cosmic, and he also guides it from there. Okay, so he is sending his deputy into the, which is the cosmic nature, And then from there, he guides, his presence is there in the universe. And from the universe, he creates individual forms. So the triple status of the divine is transcendental, above the universe, in the universe, cosmic, and even in the form, each form. So this is a normal thing. So that's what he is repeating here. Okay, so from above he governs always, indeed, for so governs all nature, the human included. From within also, he governs all nature, even within. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddesha tishtati. That the divine presence is there even in the every form. And that therefore you can say in a certain sense that this Ishvara that the Gita is speaking about is not the psychic being. The psychic being is the divine presence which slowly develops and becomes. But apart from that, the divine presence is there in everything. So there is a difference between the divine presence in everything and the psychic being. It's awakened, aware of its own divinity. So next is the difference. So the difference here between what we understand by avatarhood and what Sri Krishna is telling, the difference is here that he is manifest, okay? That the nature is conscious of the divine presence as a Lord, okay? The inhabitant, and it is not by his secret will from above, the will of the Father which is in heaven, but by his quite direct and apparent will that he moves the nature. Okay. Here there seems to be no room for the human intermediary. The Gita's phrase, the 6th verse, seems to imply that the avatar is absolutely divine right from the top. Right? So that is a question. Direct, and here there seems to be no room for the human intermediary. For it is by resort to his own nature, Prakritim Swam, and not the special nature of the Jiva, that the Lord of all existence thus takes upon himself the human birth. So, the avatar, as we normally understand, is the human being through many lives makes himself ready, and when he is ready, then the divine descends into him. Normally, a yogi ascends into the higher levels of consciousness. But there is also a descent, okay? Even in yogis, there is a descent of consciousness that comes into him, there is a descent of power, okay? But not the divine himself. So it's a very subtle thing, so we have to understand it in the right way. Not very easy. The concept of avatarhood is really difficult if you go into details. So Srimani is saying, and here there seems to be no room for the human intermediary. For it is by resort to his own nature, Prakritim Swam, and not the special nature of the Jiva, that the Lord of all existences thus takes upon himself the human birth. Also remember that mother's body, she says very clearly in one place, that mother's body was being prepared by Saraswati herself in mother's maternal mother in her womb. Her body was being prepared. And that's the reason why Sri Aurobindo told mother, that your body is prepared and designed for the divine descent, the supramental descent, but not mine. He says that. He says, you have to complete the work. Because her body was absolutely prepared for the descent of the Superman. Okay, so now you can see the difference. But here in this case, what Sri Krishna is saying, that the question of preparation of body and all that is not that. The divine himself descends into a body. So that's why Sevda says the next para, this doctrine is a hard saying, a difficult thing for the human reason to accept. Okay. So we'll read the para now that we're going to read. This doctrine. So who will read? Who has the text?
What are Krishna's past births?
No, I didn't follow what you said, Jasmine.
Lord Krishna's
Yeah.
past births, what are they?
Oh, that we are not very clear about. But Shri Krishna is supposed to be an incarnation of Vishnu. Okay. So then I'm not sure. In fact, I don't know if it is mentioned even. I don't know. Maybe in the Bhagavatam it is mentioned, but I haven't read the Bhagavatam. I'm not sure.
Because here the sentence says, no, Krishna speaks of his many births
That's right.
that are past and
That's right.
makes it clear by his language.
Yes, that's right.
So, what are his past births?
That has not been described in the Gita, at least it is not there. But it may be there in other places. But Srimdo was asked, okay? He says that you are the avatar and you have always, so what have you been doing? Because I have been there right from the beginning of creation. So when he was asked, he said, what were you doing in your past births? He was asked. And he replied very laconically and very summarily. He said, carrying on the evolution. Okay. Now you must understand it very clearly. Okay. We know, for instance, that Sriramda was Augustus Caesar. We know that he was Leonardo da Vinci. Okay. So what is meant by carrying on the evolution? In other words, it means that you are the highest of the human levels and you are pushing the evolution of that level to a higher level. In Augustus's case, he was a empire builder, okay, and in the case of uh, Leonardo da Vinci, he was one of the main elements in the European Renaissance. No? So he was not only a painter but also he conceived of many scientific devices also. So his consciousness is so high, he's pulling the lower consciousness to a higher level. So that is what you meant by carrying on the evolution. Mother also was in her past life, she was a queen. Okay. She was in Egypt also, she was a queen. And in England also, she was a queen, Elizabeth. Okay. These are all given by her herself. She herself has said that. So you are at a height and you are pushing the lower levels of consciousness to go to a higher level. But the avatar is a decisive movement from one level to another level. But within the lower levels also there is a climbing, there is an evolution. Okay, so what the births of Sri Krishna were, I don't know. If anyone knows, they can tell me. If you have read the Bhagavatam, maybe you will know what the other lives were, but I don't know. It's an interesting question. Okay, so we read the next one. Who can read? Who has the text? Yasmin, you have the text?
Yeah, I can read.
Okay, go ahead, read. This doctrine.
This doctrine, this doctrine is a hard saying, a difficult thing for the human reason to accept, and for an obvious reason, because of the evident humanity of the avatar. The avatar is always a dual phenomena of divinity and humanity. The divine takes upon himself the human nature and with all its outward limitations and makes them the circumstances, means, instruments of the divine consciousness and the divine power, a vessel of the divine birth and the divine works. But so surely it must be, since otherwise the object of the avatar's descent is not fulfilled. For that object is precisely to show that the human birth, with all its limitations, can be made such a means and instrument of the divine birth and the divine works, precisely to show that the human type of consciousness can be compatible compatible with the divine essence of consciousness made manifest, can be converted into its vessel, drawn into nearer conformity with it by a change of its mold and a heightening of its power of light and love and strength and purity, and to show also how it can be done. If the avatar were to act in an entirely supernormal fashion, this object would not be fulfilled. A merely supernormal or miraculous avatar would be a meaningless absurdity. Not that there need be an entire absence of the use of supernormal powers, such as crisis, so-called miracles of healing, for the use of supernormal power is quite a possibility of the human nature. But there need not be that at all, nor in any case is it the root of matter, nor would it at all do if the life were nothing else but a display of supernormal fireworks. The avatar does not come as a thaumaturgic magician, but as the divine leader of humanity and the exemplar of a divine humanity. Even human sorrow and physical suffering, he must assume and use so as to show first how that suffering may be a means of redemption, as did Christ. Secondly, to show how, having been assumed by the divine soul in the human nature, it can also be overcome in the same nature as did Buddha. The rationalist who would have cried to Christ, "If thou art the Son of God, come down from the cross," or points out sagely that the avatar was not divine because he died, and died too by disease, as a dog dieth, knows not what he is saying, for he has missed the root of the whole matter. Even the avatar of sorrow and suffering must come before there can be the avatar of the divine joy. The human limitation must be assumed in order to show how it can be overcome, and the way and the extent of the overcoming, whether internal only or external also, depends upon the stage of the human advance. It must not be done by a non-human miracle.
The whole paragraph is an argument that the sixth verse of chapter 4 should not be misinterpreted. Okay? That's the whole idea. Yes. It is not the divine himself coming down fully divine into a human body, because then the purpose of avatarhood would be annulled. Because the purpose of avatarhood is to show human beings, imperfect human beings, how to climb out of darkness into light, how to get conscious from the unconscious, how to get power when you are weak. That is the whole purpose. So this is the contradiction. It's not a divine coming down fully with a divine nature. That's the whole idea. Because remember that even when the divine, the Advaita philosophy, even when the divine is coming down and creating the world, he himself is plunging himself into darkness. Okay? He takes on humanity. He takes on the limitations of a human and shows how to get it. That's the whole discussion here. It's a very interesting paragraph. We'll have a look at it. I think we've got about 11 minutes to go. So, this doctrine is a hard saying, a difficult thing for the human reason to accept, for an obvious reason, because the evident humanity of the avatar. He has a body, and the body is full of suffering and subject to death. So how can it be divine? Very clear. He also has a vital, and when the vital is there, there can be imperfections in the vital also. Even the mind will be, they'll be subject to darkness in the beginning. Okay? So therefore it's difficult to accept this interpretation of the sixth verse. That is the divine himself who comes down to the physical world. He does come down, but he puts on the nature of the human being. That's the whole point. The avatar is always a dual phenomenon of divinity and humanity. And this Humanity, the difference is that the human has got past births. Okay? But this interpretation of the sixth verse would mean that the divine does not have past births. He enters into any body he wants with his full divine nature. So it cannot be accepted very easily. That's what I'm pointing out. Okay. The divine takes upon himself the human nature with all its outward limitations and makes them the circumstances, means, instruments of the divine consciousness and the divine power. Okay. A vessel of the divine birth and divine works. The body-mind life of the avatar is only a vessel. Okay. It's a container into which the divine pours himself fully. But so surely it must be, since otherwise the object of the avatar's descent is not fulfilled. For that object is precisely to show that the human birth, with all its limitations, can be made such a means and instrument of the divine birth and divine works. Precisely to show that the human type of consciousness can be compatible with the divine essence of consciousness made manifest. Note the word divine essence. The body is not yet divine, but the consciousness is divine in essence. Made manifest, can be converted into its vessel, drawn into nearer conformity with it by change of its mode and a heightening of the powers of light and love and strength and purity. Now note interestingly, he's saying that the vessel itself, the body-mind life, drawn into nearer conformity with it by change of its mold. So, whenever a yogi is rising in consciousness, the body changes are always there. Okay, there are changes in the body that occurs. There is a remolding that happens, and a heightening of its powers of light and love and strength and purity. And to show also how it can be done. That's the main purpose of the avatar. He shows how a human being can be put on a divine nature. I think I told you, but I'm just reminding you how Niruddha teases Srirdo, which is letters. They are very interesting, humorous exchanges. And he tells Srirdo, you are divine. So it's very easy for you to do yoga. Okay? But for us, we are human. It's very difficult for us to do. So Srirdo says that you're talking rubbish. Okay? He doesn't use this language. But he says that what you're saying is not true at all. It is that the avatar shows the human being how to rise out of ignorance into knowledge, how to rise out of incompetence into competence, how to rise from unconsciousness to consciousness. Otherwise, what's the purpose of the avatar? He doesn't pretend to put on the human nature. He does put on the human nature really, in absolutely a material sense. That's what he tells you. So, if the avatar were to act in entirely normal fashion, this object would not be fulfilled. Note the word entirely supernormal fashion, because not only the divine, but even the yogis have powers which seem to be divine powers. Okay, we'll give examples. It will be very interesting to see. A merely supernormal or miraculous avatar would be a meaningless absurdity. Not that there need be any entire absence of the use of supernormal powers, such as Christ's. So this is what I'm going to tell you, actual cases in the physical world. Okay, by the entire absence of the use of supernormal powers, such as Christ's so-called miracles of healing. For the use of supernormal powers is quite a possibility of human nature. So he is referring here to Christ's miracles. There are two which are famous. One is the turning a blind man to restore his sight. And the other is a leper, I think. Okay? And he gets cured. And they are absolutely stunned when they are changed, the two human beings. But Christ tells them, it is your faith that has cured you. Okay? If you are ready, the human being is ready to accept the divine power, then it can be done. Okay? Now, and the other case is that famous example of how with a very limited amount of fish and wine, he was able to feed everybody. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting thing because even in the physical world, there are several cases. Okay. There is one case of Neem Karoli Baba. I think I'd spoken about it to you earlier. People used to come and give him uh, fruits and things like that, flowers. And he used to always put a chadar. His legs were always covered by a chadar. Okay. So when people came and gave him some apples, he put the apples underneath the chadar. Okay. But afterwards, when more people came, he started distributing these apples. So what was given was much less than what was distributed. So how come? That's one case. And there's also recently also there's another case where um, uh, I don't know if you know that Mata Amritanandamai. Okay, there is a story that the people who were preparing the food found it much less, so they were wondering what to do. And she herself came and said, "Don't worry about it." And when she distributed, it was enough for everybody. It was a huge crowd. If you see videos of her, you will see how there are unbelievable crowds gathered around her all over the world. Huh? So, and she was able to do that. So it is possible even here. That's why there is a Shankaracharya's one stotra is there. Mata Annapurneshwari. Annapurna. She is the one who is giving endlessly. Okay. It can be repeated also in the physical world in that sense. So that's it. So they're mentioning that very clearly. Right? A merely supernatural, normal or miraculous avatar would be meaningless. Then he's saying, not that there need be an entire absence of the use of supernatural power such as Christ. Okay? He's not mentioning his own power of curing people, okay? But he's talking of the actual historical miracles that took place. That's why I mentioned to you two more. Okay, so for the use of supernatural power is quite a possibility of human nature. But there need not be that at all. Okay? Certainly, the ones who have the power to do miracles don't perform miracles because that is not the purpose. And that will also use an egoistic use of showing your power. So a real yogi never does that. He does not show his powers, but he utilizes them for the benefit of others in a very guarded manner. Okay? So that's possible. Srinagar was curing so many people. Right? So, the use of supernatural powers is quite a possibility of human nature. But there need not be that at all. Nor in any case is the root of the matter. Nor would it at all do if the life were nothing else but a display of supernormal fireworks. Use the word fireworks of magic, okay? The miracles. So, the avatar does not come as a thaumaturgic magician. Thaumaturge is a word used for one who is a miracle worker, okay? Who can do miracles, a thaumaturgic magician. But as the divine leader of humanity and the exemplar, one who is an example to others of a divine humanity. Even human, it's almost time, even human sorrow and physical suffering he must assume and use so as to show first how that suffering may be a means of redemption, as did Christ. In fact, Christ was even crucified. Okay? So the avatar, when he comes down, he is subject to pain and suffering. Okay? It's not a pretense, it's real. Secondly, to show how, having been assumed by the divine soul in the human nature, it can also be overcome in the same nature as did Buddha. Okay? Buddha was a human being and he managed to get over his humanness and become divine. The rationalist who would have cried to Christ, "If thou art the Son of God, come down from the cross." This is absolutely the wrong idea of understanding the divinity of the avatar, or points out sagely that the avatar was not divine because he died, and died too by disease. And in what way? As a dog dieth, you are absolutely subject to the imperfections of the human level. Knows not what he is saying. If he says that, he doesn't understand at all. For he has missed the root of the whole matter. Even the avatar of sorrow and suffering must come before there can be the avatar of divine joy. The human limitation must be assumed in order to show how it can be overcome. And the way and the extent of the overcoming, whether internal only or external also. In other words, the powers can be manifested. People will be able to see power. Depends upon the stage of the human advance. It must not be done by a non-human miracle. The avatar does not show miracles. So, interesting discussion. So the difference between, so the phrase in the Gita should not be misinterpreted. That's what is the main point. We'll stop here today, and the next time the question then arises. So, okay, au revoir.
Thank you, Ranganath. Thank you, Ranganath.
Yes.
Thank you, Rangana.
Okay, au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you.